Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. This is a series that I have wanted to do for some time, and that is to reorganize my whole tarot library and share many of these books with you. And while, of course, I don't have every tarot book there is out there, I thought I would just share the ones that I do have, and I've put them into categories. And today I am going to begin with beginner general reference books. Then next week I'm going to look at beginner decks with excellent guidebooks and progress through a rather large library of tarot books, and the intention is to broadcast live on Tuesdays at 11. And so other than that, there isn't really much of a plan other than sharing some really beautiful books. Now, this first book that I have on my table is from 1970. And I purchased this on eBay because I was looking for a very specific spread that was created by Eden Gray. And it did not appear in this book, but I've kept this book just because it's a treasure from 1970. And one of the things I want to encourage you to do is to look for tarot books in used bookstores and on eBay as well, because sometimes you can get really good deals with older versions of many of the books that I'm sharing with you. I'm thinking some of the Rachel Pollack books that first editions came out ages ago. So don't if you like having actual books in hand, this is just a treasure. Now, this book, A Complete Guide to the Tarot by Eden Gray, is it's rather thin, but I do like its simplicity. And as I go through some of the books today, one of the things that I've noticed is, let's see, where I want to get as much on the table as possible, and then we'll zoom in a little bit, is just too much information. And part of my process was dividing my general reference books into beginner, and then I called it intermediate, but I just want to call it the next step, because I think a beginner book doesn't need to have every symbol listed and just so much detail. And as we go through some of the books, I'll see what I'm talking about. But if you have an opportunity to pick up something like this, I strongly recommend. And I'm just going to switch cameras so I can look at this face on. That page that I just turned to. So here's something really sweet. And one of the newer books that I have does this as well too. And that's where you have colored pictures comparing decks through the decades, or decks comparing across various decks. So that is one of the advantages of purchasing a deck, purchasing a book by a company like Llewellyn or US Games, the same publisher, because then you will have a variety of decks from the same publisher in that book. And I'm just thinking of one book. I used to do readings every week at a metaphysical store. And there was a small series of books, I think it was by Llewellyn, and their tarot Bible was fantastic. Now, this is not So I have Crystal Bible 1, 2, 3. It's not that series, but Llewellyn put out another series, and their tarot version of that was just fantastic because it had so many decks in it. And I'll see if I can find it for next week and just sort of start with that before I get on to the next topic. Okay. Note to self. All right. So, but the book that really takes us forward is a series of books by Lo Scarabeo. And the first one in that series is called Tarot Fundamentals. And I have all three of them, and I will share book 2 and book 3 in the next steps episode, which will likely be the 4th episode. These are very reasonable hardcover books with a wealth of information. And if I just compare the spine, you can see these books are heavy, they take up a lot of room, and they also are printed on glossy paper. And this is what I'm talking about. So when you have a book that is published by a major publisher, that is a general reference, there tends to be a lot of colored pictures. And that's one of the things I like here for multiple reasons. One is that I do, well, I'm going to say did love shopping for decks and trying to find that perfect deck. And this series has so many decks, full color illustrations, that it was lovely for that. But also just the right amount of information. So here is the page for the Ace of Cups, a description of the image followed by keywords. And then we see a variety of Ace of Cups card. And, you know, it's just not too much information, which is kind of perfect. And so I love that. And then after the 78 cards are described, there are other beginning reader resources that aren't overly complicated. Now, I have to say in this series, book 3 is definitely my favorite. It's called Tarot Compendium. But this, if you have space and you know that you're going to be working with the tarot for some time, this whole series is really, really lovely. Yeah, if you like books. And I just absolutely love books. I would so much rather have a book in hand, especially if it has a nice binding, so it's easy to read, and the pictures are colorful. This tome, now if I compare the spine to the previous 2 books, this one is even larger. It is an enormous book. So you can see this. The writer, Benebell, is never short on words. Very, very thorough. And I would say that this book almost tips the scales on the next step. I probably should have shown you a couple other books first. This book I did a book club with. And if you are interested, in my Facebook group, so in Facebook groups, there is a tab up at the top that's called, now it's called Guides. And I have a guide to this book in my Facebook group where you can go back and listen to our book club discussions and what went through there. Benebell also has on her page all kinds of guides to this book. So there's a wealth of information that comes with this book. And honestly, I would say that while this book appears to be a beginner book, it is a lot overwhelming. And I would say that if you are just starting out, this might not be the book for you. But if you picked up the tarot 10 years ago when you didn't really study it and you're familiar with it, you could probably name all of the cards, have an idea of some of the meanings of the cards. This book might be, I would say this could be your one and only book. This book is so thorough. It contains amazing spreads, techniques, different points of view on reading the tarot, all kinds of thoughtful perspectives on why read the tarot, and what does a reading do? What is the purpose of a reading? Yeah, it's not a quick read, and it's something that you might buy for the first part of the book as a beginner, and then buy it and then use the latter part of the book as you got a little bit deeper into your tarot studies. Okay, so let's go a little bit lighter. There are a few tarot books out there that have a real sense of humor and do their best to make the tarot seem relevant. And I think there are a few guidebooks, decks that have been created that attempt to do that as well. Now, as far as an extra reference book, I think this one is a great beginner reference. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here so you can just get a sense of humor here. This is in the introductory section. Melissa says, "I do not read for that drunk person over there." Seriously, drunk or high person. She goes on. Number 2, I do not read for jerky jerks. Number 3, I do not do readings about death or birth. And in this book, she talks about the experience of being a reader. And that would even include, I think, as a beginner, reading for friends and family. But what I wanted to share with you primarily is the section on the trumps, the major arcana, and the section on the minors. So in this book, of course, there is a description of the card, but in a very brief way, she makes it more personal. And there are prompts and questions for each card to dive into that. And honestly, as a tarot teacher, I've been teaching tarot for some time, and I created tarot prompts for the major arcana, among other cards and things. I have a course called Tarot Foundations 1. It's available. It's a pre-recorded course. And I really feel that the deepest study comes from good questions that prompt your own inquiry of the cards. And so on my tarot prompt sheets, I also have, of course, quotations and keywords. And sometimes it can be a quotation that takes you, that sort of sets your head spinning and go, oh, wow, I've never looked at that card that way before. This is a Llewellyn publication. So, of course, there are lots of decks featured in black and white in this book. The descriptions on the minors are kept quite short. And a few other thoughts that keep reading kind of real. Okay, it's a really easy read. It's not. I would say it's the stark opposite to reading something like holistic tarot. Okay, I want to share with you when I started reading tarot, or when I went back to study tarot, I should say, there were not a lot of tarot books available. It was really hard to find a good one. And this one, I went through cover to cover. The thing I liked about this book too was that I was working with the Robin Wood at the time, or I'm not sure what came first, this book or the Robin Wood, but it made it easier because the pictures of the deck that I was working with were featured here. Now, I will share with you another book that is written by Robin Wood herself that features her cards, but this was a real advantage for me in studying with this book. Now, this book has a little more, I would say, than the previous book that I showed you, but again, it is not overwhelming. And what you get in this book that isn't in the other book are ideas about how the card might pertain to various situations. And I know that there are quite a few books out there that do this. This book, Tarot Plain and Simple, it should still be in print. I just want to tell you. So 2003, it is a Llewellyn book. You want to, it might, and again, this might be a book that you can find on a used book shelf, right? What I wanted to say was about in selecting a beginner book. It is really difficult to find one that is just the right amount of information. Honestly, I would recommend taking a course. But if you are a book person and you love to read, make sure you're starting. As you choose your books, they're not books that overwhelm. Okay? Now, this book has been around for ages. The first printing of 78 Degrees of Wisdom. So this is the 3rd edition. Came out in 1980, so 10 years after that first book that I showed you. It doesn't have pretty pictures. It's an older book. And it, Rachel Pollack is a icon in the tarot world. And she gave so much to this community. She gave so much support to tarot readers of all levels. And I think having this book on your library is either this book or a book by Mary Greer. These are two names in the tarot that are just a wealth of information. And I don't find this book particularly easy to read, or didn't. This is a newer version. I gave my older version away. And sometimes I struggle, and I want to give you an example. So let me just do this. And I'm going to choose a major. So in the second paragraph, she says, so far we have spoken of the second line as a process of withdrawal from outer concerns to awaken the inner vision of ourselves and our life. But a vision of the underlying nature of things is meaningless if it does not have an active response. We must always act, the magician principle, on the wisdom received from the inner self, the high priestess principle, not just the perfectly balanced scales, but all the images on this card point to an equilibrium between understanding and action. I don't know if you caught it in that first sentence, but there's often a reference to something she said before or something she outlined before. So it's important in working with this book. Like, this is one of the books you need to read cover to cover and digest it piece by piece. It's not one of those books where you can kind of go flip back and forth, because it refers to things that came before. So you really need to take it step by step. There's certain books that I have on my shelf where I can go pick it up and I can go to any card and get really good stuff. But I find with this book, you need to be able to remember what came before. So there we go. I have 3 others that I want to share with you. One is another one that has a great sense of humor, and this is by Ethony, who is an active member of the tarot community. She lives in Vancouver, Canada. Yeah, she's a really interesting reader. This one focuses on the court cards. And one of the things that she does in this book, so again, it's a Llewellyn book, so you're going to get a variety of cards illustrated here. It is in black and white. But she does have scenarios for all of these cards. And she describes of course, the archetype, but also references each of the court cards in terms of familiar characters, characters in songs, and she really does bring each of the court cards alive. And there have been places where I might disagree with the way that she introduces a court card or some of the associations, but I think it's really thorough, and it gives a variety of references for various age groups, if that makes sense, because we don't all listen to the same music, we don't all watch the same movies, and so sometimes movie references can go over my head because I haven't seen the movie. Like, I often refer to the same movies that people haven't seen, so I try to describe the scene, describe the character, and so forth. I want to give you an example. I'm looking at the Queen of Wands here. Okay. So maybe that's not a great example. Sorry, I should have picked one out ahead of time. I'm just going to flip and we'll find one. Okay, let's go to the Knight of Swords. She also does a great job in discussing the court cards, not according to gender. So she'll have examples of a variety of genders for each of the court cards, which is really, really useful. So here I am at the Knight of Swords. She describes this archetype as the warrior. Goes on to talk about this archetype in love and relationships, at work and career. And indicators that this is indeed your significator, its strengths and its shadows. And how does this archetype appear in a reading? She talks a little bit about what's popping off the page here is Wonder Woman. And if you're familiar with either the character Wonder Woman or the archetype of Wonder Woman, then that places this tarot card in a context. So that might be really helpful if you're struggling with the court cards. So I wanted to mention this book because it's quite a thorough reference, and Ethony is an experienced reader, and I think it's something that you should know about as a beginner. Now there is another court card reference book that I will talk about in extra deck guidebooks, so I will share with you more references in that way. This is a deck. This is a book that I purchased in Error Tarot for the Green Witch. I thought that this was a extra guidebook for the Green Witch Tarot. It is not. It just happens that the author of this book is the author, I believe, is connected to that book. Now, again, this is a major publisher. This is another Llewellyn book. And so you are going to get a variety of cards described here. Okay. Hello, Amelia. Welcome. But what I did want to share with you, which is a really interesting feature of this book, is that let me zoom in so you can see, at the end of each card, I've never seen this, and this might be a little bit confusing, but she talks about the card in hand. So let me... No, she doesn't. Okay, sorry. It's been a while since I looked at this. I need to go back and review it. But what this does is it talks about card interactions. And it reminds me of certain Lenormand websites where there are discussions on 2-card readings. And that's what this book does, is it gives you a ton of details about card interactions. So here you can see this says 2 of Pentacles, new skills learned, balancing money, business decisions, new job. And then it goes on to talk about the 2 of Pentacles with the Ace of Wands, the 2 of Pentacles with the Ace of Cups. And if you love this kind of detail, I thought this was a really interesting feature of this book. Okay. And yeah, really reminds me of Lenormand references. Okay. Hello, Saskia. Welcome. And the last book I'm going to share with you today, I think this is one, because the Waite-Smith Tarot is so widely read and used as a beginner deck. I think this is a worthwhile reference book to have on your shelf. And this one is called Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot by Katz, Marcus Katz, and Tally Goodwin. Now, Tally Goodwin is also one of the authors, I believe Marcus Katz as well too, of that large series that I shared earlier. And they work for Lo Scarabeo. And Marcus is a really interesting person. I have seen him share. He has a video on YouTube about the Tildwick Tarot, all kinds of like he's a wealth of information. So really, really cool. And what this book does is it puts the art of Pamela Coleman Smith in perspective. Okay. Okay, can't find exactly what I'm looking for. But what this book does include are notes and all kinds of photographs and artwork from the time that likely the cards were being developed. So it puts the cards in context or researched context. And while there, if you are an experienced reader, you might go, what? I've never seen it that way. You know, it might provide insight. You may disagree with it, but it certainly gives wonderful information. It helps you understand the Waite-Smith Tarot on a whole new level. And one of my favorite things in this book is a landscape painting that is said to include the whole of the Waite-Smith Tarot. You can see the tower here. You can see maybe the farm that is in one of the cards. And it's like it's a complete thought for this whole story of the Waite-Smith Tarot. So it no longer appears like a disconnected set of 78 images. So I would strongly, if you are working with this deck and want to learn more about this deck and the foundations of tarot, that this is something definitely worthwhile having in your library. Okay. What I'm going to do next time is I'm going to share with you guidebooks that come with beginner tarot decks that might replace books like this, so that if you have the guidebook that comes with it, it's just a wealth of information and you don't really need to be reaching out to other books. I think one of the problems with starting on this journey is the love of the beauty of the cards and starting to acquire too many decks, because then we don't actually learn to read, we just start to acquire. So that is a problem. So if you know a couple of decks that have really good guidebooks, then in theory you could work with that deck for a year or more. And that's something I strongly recommend, to not start building a library of tarot books before you know of tarot decks before you know how to read the tarot. Yeah. Okay. Just in case you are interested and would like to work with me, I do have a 22-week course that is available, and you can one of the things that is different about this course is that I will be in contact with you. Even though it's a pre-recorded course, if you make a comment on any of the videos, I will respond to you and I will have a personal conversation with you. Another promise that I have is that if you ask a question that warrants another video and is not included in that series, like I can't point you to another video, then I will make another video and add it to this series. And I have done that in a couple of occasions. There are, I believe, more than 22 videos in this series. But so yeah, I really, really love teaching tarot, and I'm here to support you in whatever way helps, whatever reason you've come to read the tarot for. And hopefully it's for your own self-study and your own learning, and a way to help navigate through all the stuff that's going on in your life, because that's the gift of the tarot. And yeah, so that's all for today. And I will be back next week, like I said, with beginner decks with great guidebooks. Thanks for being here. I look forward to your comments. Namaste.